DraftKings stock recently popped on news. The ARK Invest Next Generation ETF, ARKW, purchased shares. And joining me now with insights on the outlook for online sports gambling is Nick Grouse, analyst at ARK. Thanks for joining me today, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
So first, Nick, we can get into DraftKings specifically in a little bit, but let's take a step back and talk about the online sports gambling market and the potential for growth here. It still seems like we're in very early innings with this theme.
Absolutely. And, when we first started looking at the online sports betting space, the realization we came to is this is a supply and demand issue, in that there is definitely a ton of consumer demand, but the supply has been held up by regulation. And I would just add there that regulation is starting to favor more and more online sports betting. So when you look at it as just a supply and demand issue, this is definitely still very much early days.
And, even though the pandemic squashed sports for quite a while, it seems like interest in online betting surged in 2020. So this theme appears to not only have benefited from the pandemic with esports and people having to stay indoors and figure out new hobbies, but it also seems like it could be set to benefit further as the economy continues to reopen as well, with more sporting events taking place. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, and you kind of nailed it there. This year was absolutely disastrous for sports. You had cancellation of tournaments, you had shortened seasons, but what we actually saw was an enormous growth in online sports betting. We grew from 2019, $13 billion in handle. So that's just the total sum of all bets. In 2019 was 13 billion, and that grew to actually 18 billion in 2020, despite the terrible year that sports as a whole had. So there's definitely demand there for online sports betting. And that 18 billion, it breaks down to around 1 billion in total revenue for 2020. We expect that to almost 18x in terms of we're going to go from 1 billion in revenue in 2020 to almost 18 billion in revenue by 2025. That's how much demand there is for online sports betting.
So just a couple of years' time. And so you talked about the supply and demand issue. So where do we stand now on more states legalizing online sports betting? What specifically are you watching on that front?
So we're watching how states are approaching this issue. And we've seen over the past few weeks, a number of very large states, Texas and New York to kind of be specific, come out in favor of, passing legislation that would allow for online sports betting. And then I would break it into specifically mobile sports betting is really where you're starting to see a ton of engagement, just because of the stickiness and convenience that offers to bettors.
So talking about mobile, when it comes to DraftKings in particular, what do you think sets that business apart from others in this space?
Sure. When we looked at DraftKings in the space overall, we view this as a technological problem, right? You need to offer bettors the most convenient and easy way to place bets. And when we looked at DraftKings, what we saw was an amazing technical stack in terms of the rest of the competitors have not yet caught up to DraftKings in terms of the technical innovation that they're providing to mobile sports bettors. And that's really what it excited us about DraftKings as compared to other competitors.
Now, what other innovations are in the pipeline for DraftKings and others in the space that's set to fuel growth beyond this year, beyond the pandemic, as the economy continues to reopen? What's going to keep people in that online sports gambling mode and pick up the pace, really?
Well, certainly once we get back into full swing of, live sports, that's going to add fuel to this fire. Increase, regulation in terms of, we're going to see new states coming out in favor of this. But then really when we're talking, 5-10 years down the road, how does, sports betting grow? We see the esports arena to be something that really has yet to be even tapped at all. This is an amazing opportunity for this area. If you're talking about total revenues, the online gaming industry, so this is just video games now, brought in roughly $175 billion in 2020. That's more than movies, music, every other entertainment category combined, really. And so that's an enormous opportunity for sports books to enter into, and esports is, a growing segment of that online gaming space.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe some of the retail investors who tried out GameStop might be interested in doing the esports betting. We'll have to see. But we can't talk about online sports betting without mentioning the Super Bowl, of course. What kind of impact do you think that this year's Super Bowl is going to have on sports betting? You know, I've heard DraftKings are set to have some big ads. What kind of interest do you think that this event could spark and help fuel for the remainder of the year?
Just recognition of what's happening in the space, and I think that takes time, and it takes events like the Super Bowl, like the college football championship, to really bring awareness to consumers that have not yet realized that mobile sports betting is actually an offering in their state. This is a marketing effort, one, and then two, long term, just allowing easy access to place bets before the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl, during the Super Bowl. This is really what these type of events offer to the online sports betting space.
All right, great. Well, Nick, thanks so much for helping us learn more about what's driving the growth in the online sports gambling industry. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks so much for watching Investing Strategies on our YouTube channel. If you want more executive interviews and analysis of key trends to watch, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date.